and disappearances.
Oh, wonderful. That's true. Anyone else have something to say about that? That was beautiful. And Prabhupada gives the perfect examples all the time. The sun is the perfect example. But did you have something to explain about that further? Should we just go on? Unmute.
You can just go on.
You can go on.
Okay.
Okay.
I wanted to say something.
Okay.
I thought, like, I think that is further ahead when it says that Vidura, so that it was just like she's misfortune to not have achieved the Vaikuntha planets, because he had to stay and suffer, like here being without Krishna. And I was like, I don't know, in regards to the sun, how could anyone really just endure that time after Krishna disappeared? It's unimaginable.
Yeah. Very profound. It takes a lot of contemplation. Thank you. Let's go on now with Faye. Can you read the next two slides?
Yes, Mataji. Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.2.8. The universe with all its planets is most unfortunate, and even more unfortunate are the members of the Yadu dynasty, because they could not identify Lord Hari as the personality of Godhead any more than the fish could identify the moon. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Uddhava lamented for the unfortunate persons of the world who could not recognize Lord Sri Krishna in spite of seeing all his transcendental godly qualities from the beginning of his appearance within the prison bars of King Kamsa up to his Masala Leela. Although he exhibited his potencies as the personality of Godhead in the six opulences of wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation, the foolish persons of the world could not understand that he was the Supreme Lord. Foolish persons might have thought him an extraordinary historic figure because they had no intimate touch with the Lord. But more unfortunate were the family members of the Lord, the members of the Yadu dynasty, who were always in company with the Lord, but were unable to recognize him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Actually, Sama, before going on to the next verse, these two verses that we just read, 7 and 8, are more or less the same thing of Uddhava expressing his mood, his feelings and sadness that the Lord has disappeared. Then he'll go on to discuss different characters and people and their feelings. So if you want to get somebody to talk about that now, we can do that before you continue.
Okay, I'd like to say also, because Elizabeth brought up an interesting point, these Prabhupada is speaking now about some rasa. Rasa means that the relationship that the devotees have with Krishna, and it's very profound. And we don't have to expect that we will understand the profoundness of a pure soul's rasa with Krishna at this point. So just hearing the Bhagavatam is purifying, and some things can only be perfectly understood through realization. So if you're confused about certain things, Prabhupada said, keep chanting, it will come. So keep at this. These are very profound discussions that Uddhava and Srila Prabhupada is mentioning about the relationship with pure souls with Krishna. So does anyone else have something to say before we go on? I'd like to also welcome Guru Prasadam Das. I haven't seen you here before. Welcome, Prabhu.
I
Nice
think
to
he's a,
see
he's,
you.
he's a guest that Elizabeth invited.
Yes, Prabhuji.
Hi, welcome, Prabhu.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for accepting me.
Okay, you get your finger out of the thing there. Okay, so if anyone doesn't, let's just go on. Is that all right, Pati, if we continue now for the next verse? If no one else has anything to add, we'll just go on reading and hear from Uddhava. Faye, you want to continue?
Yes, Mataji. Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.2.9. The Yadus were all experienced devotees, learned and expert in psychic study. Over and above this, they were always with the Lord in all kinds of relaxations, and still they were only able to know Him as the One Supreme who dwells everywhere. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Yadavas were all exceptionally learned and experienced, but in spite of their knowing the Lord as the one who lives in everyone's heart, they could not understand that He is the original personality of Godhead. This lack of knowledge was not due to their insufficient erudition, it was due to their misfortune. In Vrindavan, however, the Lord was not even known as the Paramatma, because the residents of Vrindavan were pure, unconventional devotees of the Lord, and could think of Him only as their object of love. They did not know that He is the personality of Godhead. The Yadus, or the residents of Dwarka, however, could know Lord Krishna as Vasudeva, or the Supersoul living everywhere, but not as the Supreme Lord. The Yadus accepted Lord Krishna as the Supersoul incarnated in their family, and not more than that.
See this whole explanation, my husband and I have spoken about it many times, trying to understand it from different angles. So this also is to increase the ras. This is an explanation of the relationship between Krishna and his pure devotees. And let's just leave it at that for now. If anybody has
Oh,
any.
no. I
No,
don't
no.
like that at all.
Okay, here he
No,
comes.
just leave it. You didn't say
Tell-
anything.
I didn't say anything because I'm still a little bit bewildered about
The
this.
question arises that I'd like to bring up and start the discussion on is that Uddhava is saying that the Yadus only knew Krishna as the super soul of everything and not more than that. He's lamenting that understanding. But in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains that the residents of Vrindavan loved Krishna without even knowing him as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So the question arises, why are the residents of Vrindavan considered more like higher devotees than those who actually realize Krishna's position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead?
Okay, I just thought of it from another angle, because not more than that can be, okay, he's the super soul, but he's still in my family. That could be rasa also. That's.
Let's hear from somebody else what they may think.
Okay. Anyone else want to say? Madhurya? Nanda, she's here. Do you have something to say about this one, Nandaji?
Well, it's certainly bewildering, that's for sure. That's all I can say. And I was actually kind of hoping to hear other people's comments for it to stimulate me, because I don't have anything very profound to say at this particular point.
Okay. Thank you, Nandaji. Elizabeth, did you have a question?
Well, I wanted to say that the way that I understand the inhabitants of Vrindavan didn't know that, or didn't realize that, and it is like the evidence that they're higher is because Krishna knows they love him so much and that they want to enjoy him in those rasas, that then he doesn't let them know that
Right.
he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But I had a question about the inhabitants of the Yadus, because they know him as a super soul, but they don't know him as a Supreme Personality of Godhead, when we know that the super soul and the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the same. So how come they didn't?
Well, at this point, my answer would really be that it has to do with rasa. That's the only way that, and I think that as we hear more, Elizabeth, as you hear more, you have to give yourself time. Here you are, you have to give yourself time, to let these things open your heart chakra and chant, and it will come.
Actually,
After
I have a
Oh, you
little
have a
bit,
simple answer.
I do have a simple answer.
Oh.
Lord Chaitanya. Lord
Ah.
Chaitanya is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He invented and taught Rupa Goswami and Sanatana Goswami, who taught Jiva Goswami and Raghunath Das Goswami, how to study the scriptures from this point of view. Prior to his advent, this was unknown. If you look up, and people knew the Vedas, people had access to all of these, but without Krishna's mercy, without him directing the living entities and awakening their ability to understand it, it will never come to pass. So what happens is that they teach a little bit differently than a person who studies the Vedas without that prime directive. If you look up the name Krishna in the dictionary or Wikipedia or anything, they generally define him as the 8th avatar of Vishnu, because in a cursory study of the Vedas, one might see, like in the third chapter of the first canto, there's a description of the different scheduled incarnations of the Lord. And Krishna and Balaram are mentioned there as incarnations of Vishnu. So from that reading, it appears that they are incarnations of Vishnu or of Narayan. So they thought that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is Narayan. And there are bona fide Vaishnava Sampradayas like the Sri Sampradaya that also conceive and study the Vedas from that point of view. It's a truth. It's actually a truth, but from a different angle. They're both true.
They are. Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and Vishnu is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So at this point, to argue,
it's not an argument, it's a sense of appreciation.
Okay.
And Uddhava is lamenting, he's stating that he was lamenting that many of the Yadus didn't understand this person. It says that they were psychically aware, they were intelligent, they were erudite in the scriptures, but still they didn't know. That's kind of his mood.
Okay, well, one more point. The Yadus have a certain mood with Krishna, as do the residents of Vrindavan have a certain mood. And in order to have that mood, that reverential love and that super soul knowledge that he's super soul, all the things that are in place have to be there for the Yadus to exhibit their profound love for Krishna. And often we hear Prabhupada said, it's not one is better than the other, although it is better because there's a more intimate relationship with Krishna in Vrindavan. So it's actually a little bit like a Chintabheda Tattva, that both are magnificent, and we would like to achieve the kind of love that either of these residents of Vrindavan or Dwarka have. But the intimacy that the gopis and Krishna share and the residents of Vrindavan share with Krishna is certainly more developed and profound. But the residents of Dwarka, they have a different mood in devotional service. So
There are
the
a
reason
couple
why
hands up too, some.
okay, just a second. But I don't want us to get confused really about what something better or worse. At this point, let's become humble devotees, and all these things will be revealed to us. And the intimate relationship that Krishna has with the devotees depends upon their purity. Who had something to say? Tisha.
I just have a question. So does this mean that Vidura knew that Krishna was the super soul within the heart and the supreme personality of Godhead? Like, did he?
Good question.
Because then when I was thinking about it, if he knew, were there other people maybe in the mix that knew, or did just people, you know what I mean? Like, did he know?
Patsy, what do you say?
I would say he probably did.
Yeah. So
He was an intimate associate of the Lord. And obviously there were many people who knew, but there were many more people who didn't know. I mean, he even went to we read earlier in the story of Vidura, he went to the palace of Dhritarashtra. He showed his universal form to explain that this is going to happen. You're going to die if you continue along these lines. These people are my devotees. Don't fight. And still, they just thought it was a magical trick because they didn't have the accumulated sukriti and the mood of a devotee to understand it. It's a wonderful example of how one has to have the right attitude. Remember back when we read the Brahma Samhita, those tridents that deflect an approaching person to a different destination than Goloka Vrindavan if they don't have the right attitude. So those that were his devotees, and Vidura is certainly one of them, Uddhava is another one, they knew who he was.
okay, so now I just want to, we'll end this discussion in a second because we have you see, this is the thing, we churn Krishna consciousness. That's what we do all day long. We churn it. And this is the nectar. This is really the nectar, even though we might be confused, at least we're talking about Krishna. But this part, the Yadus accepted the Lord as the super soul incarnated in their family, and not more than that. That really confused me, the way Prabhupada said that. Sorry about that. Wait, not more than that. So not more than that can mean several things. It can mean that was enough for them to understand, but they still considered him a resident of a member of their family. You know, it could be an intimate thing as well. What do you think about that, Patti? That it could be an intimate thing, not more than that.
I think we should move on now.
Okay, we should move on. See, we get stuck. Okay, who's reading now? Elizabeth, who read this last one? Faye. Okay, Elizabeth, you read, and then Tisha.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.2.10. Under no circumstances can the words of persons bewildered by the illusionary energy of the Lord deviate the intelligence of those who are completely surrendered souls. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. According to the atheistic point of view, Lord Krishna's family, the Yadu dynasty, was vanquished due to being cursed by the Brahmanas for the sins committed by Krishna in killing the sons of the Dhritarashtra, etc. All these blasphemies do not touch the heart of the devotees of the Lord because they know perfectly well what is what. Their intelligence regarding the Lord is never disturbed. But those who are disturbed by the statements of the Ashuras are also condemned. That is what Uddhava meant in this verse.
Okay, thank you, Elizabeth. Should she go on reading, Patti? Go on reading.
That's your department.
Okay, go on, Elizabeth.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.2.11, Lord Sri Krishna, who manifested his eternal form before the vision of all on earth, performed his disappearance by removing his form from the sight of those who were unable to see him. as he is, due to not executing required penance. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The Lord himself comes to display his transcendental pastimes. He appears just to attract the conditioned souls back to Godhead, back home to the eternal world. But for want of sufficient piety, the onlookers are not attracted by such pastimes of the Lord. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that only those who have completely surpassed the way of sinful reaction can engage themselves in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. The entire Vedic way of ritualistic performances is to put every conditioned soul on the path of piety. By strict adherence to the prescribed principles for all orders of social life, one can attain the qualities of truthfulness, control of the mind, control of the senses, forbearance, etc., and can be elevated to the plane of rendering pure devotional service to the Lord. Only by such a transcendental vision are one's material hankerings fully satisfied.
Oh, thank you. We're going to go on now with Tisha.
Okay. Thank you, Mataji. Purport continued. When the Lord, when the Lord passed beyond the vision of all, he did so in his original eternal form, as stated in this verse. The Lord left in his own body. He did not leave his body, as is generally misunderstood by the conditioned souls. This statement defeats the false propaganda of the faithless non-devotees that the Lord passed away like an ordinary conditioned soul. The Lord appeared in order to release the world from the undue burden of the non-believing Asuras. After doing this, he disappeared from the world's eyes.
Patty, could you just go back to the verse itself, please? Oh, wait, I meant 3:2:10. Read that verse.
Under no circumstances can the words of persons bewildered by the illusory energy of the Lord deviate the intelligence of those who are completely surrendered souls.
Yeah, so I think that's worth contemplating. That's a very important point. All right, I'm sorry to mix you up. Let's continue there. And she should continue reading with 3:2:12.
Okay. The Lord appeared in the mortal world by his internal potency, Yoga Maya. He came in his eternal form, which is just suitable for his pastimes. These pastimes were wonderful for everyone, even for those proud of their own opulence, including the Lord himself in his form as the Lord of Vaikuntha. Thus, his, Sri Krishna's transcendental body is the ornament of all ornaments. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In conformity with the Vedic hymns, Nityo Nityanam Chaitanas Chaitanam, the personality of Godhead is more excellent than all other living beings within all the universes in the material world. He is the chief of all living entities. No one can surpass him or be equal to him in wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, or renunciation. When Lord Krishna was within this universe, he seemed to be a human being because he appeared in a manner just suitable for his pastimes in the mortal world. He did not appear in human society in his Vaikuntha feature with 4 hands because that would not have been suitable for his pastimes. But in spite of his appearing as a human being, no one was or is equal to him in any respect in any of the 6 different opulences. When the Lord's pastimes are visible to the human eye, they are called prakata. And when they are not visible, they are called aprakata. In fact, the Lord's pastimes never stop, just as the sun never leaves the sky. The sun is always in its right orbit in the sky, but it is sometimes visible and sometimes invisible to our limited vision. Similarly, the pastimes of the Lord are always current in one universe or another. And when Lord Krishna disappeared from the transcendental abode of Dwarka, it was simply a disappearance from the eyes of the people there.
This is back to the point that we were discussing in the first section, the first verse, that the Lord's pastimes are eternal and they are continuously going on. When one pastime is finished in this universe, then it continues in another universe. This is Nitya Leela. That's what, and
I also don't want to lose track of actually the theme and the way that the storyline is going. What's happening is that Uddhava is lamenting the disappearance of the Lord. But in the purports, Srila Prabhupada is explaining that the Lord, and then Uddhava in these last verses also is describing that he appeared in his eternal human-like form. So there's kind of a dichotomy here. On one hand, we see that the Lord advented, he performed pastimes, and he left, similar to the way a conditioned soul leaves. In other words, no one could see him anymore. But in the purports, there's a great science to this. Mosala Lila, it's the disappearance of the Lord, just like there's a great science to the appearance of the Lord. And Srila Prabhupada in his purports is describing by using this analogy of the sun. But let's remember what's going on in the storyline is that Uddhava is lamenting the disappearance of the Lord. That's the main function that's going on in the story.
right. I'd like to just add one more thing, that when the Lord appears, he comes to each one of us in a different way, and because of our relationship with him. So, and he is perfect and expert in satisfying that relationship with the Yadus, with the residents of Vrindavan, with the Pandavas. He satisfies, he is Bhakta Vatsala. He cares for his devotees and he satisfies the relationship that is inherent in each soul. We have to know that. That's why one devotee who has a service, is a servant like Hanuman, he feels very satisfied. So we shouldn't think that one devotee is better than another in a mundane manner. Because I think that in the beginning we might get confused like that in the beginning of the sections about comparing the Yadus and the residents of Vrindavan. Okay, so Vaishnavi, I see you're with us now. Would you like to go on?
Okay.
Thank you, Tisha. Thank you for reading that.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.2.13. All the demigods from the upper, lower, and middle universal planetary systems assembled at the altar of Rajasuya sacrifice performed by Maharaja Yudhishthir. After seeing the beautiful bodily features of Lord Krishna, they all contemplated that he was the ultimate dexterous creation of Brahma, the creator of human beings.
Go on.
Purport. There was nothing comparable to the bodily features of Lord Krishna when he was present in this world. The most beautiful object in the material world may be compared to the blue lotus flower or the full moon in the sky. But even the lotus flower and the moon were defeated by the beauty of the bodily features of Lord Krishna. And this was certified by the demigods, the most beautiful living creatures in the universe. The demigods thought that Lord Krishna, like themselves, were also created by Lord Brahma. But in fact, Brahma was created by Lord Krishna. It was not within the power of Brahma to create the transcendental beauty of the Supreme Lord. No one is the creator of Krishna. Rather, he is the creator of everyone.
Thank you, Vaishnavi. Can you add something to that real quick?
I am never born, and things like that. There are several places where in Bhagavad Gita Krishna says that Ajopi Sannavyayatma, or I am never born.
Right. That's a good point. Thank you. Madhurya Leela, do you want to read the next slide? The next couple of slides.
Yeah, I'm not going to be able to read right now. So.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Sorry.
Nandaji, can you read? Nanda?
Sorry, Prabhu, the phone just rang. I'm occupied. Excuse me.
Oh, okay, okay. Guru Prasadam. How about you reading, Prabhu?
Okay, I can read. You have to excuse my English, but I'm trying.
Fine.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.2.14. The damsels of Braya, after pastimes of laughter, humor, and an exchange of glances, were anguished when Krishna left them. They used to follow him with their eyes, and thus they sat down with stunned intelligence and could not finish their household duties.
Okay, you want to read the purport?
Purport. In his boyhood at Vrindavan, Lord Krishna was notorious as a teasing friend in transcendental love to all the girls his age. His love for them was so intense that there is no comparison to that ecstasy, and the damsels of Braya were so much attached to him that their affection excelled that of the great demigods like Brahma and Shiva. Lord Krishna finally admitted his defeat before the transcendental affection of the gopis and declared that he was unable to repair them for their annulled affection. Also, the gopis were seemingly anguished by the Lord's teasing behavior. When Krishna would leave them, they could not tolerate the separation and used to follow him with their eyes and minds. They were so stunned by the situation that they could not finish their household duties. No one could excel him, even the dealing of love exchange between boys and girls. It is said in the revealed scriptures that Lord Krishna personally never goes beyond the boundary of Vrindavan. He remains there eternally because of the transcendental love of the inhabitants. Thus, even though he is not visible at present, he is not away from Vrindavan for a moment.
Thank you. The Lord never leaves Vrindavan. So this is his dearmost home. Thank you.
One point before we go on.
Yeah,
just it's like a spice in this story, in this pastime. The character of Uddhava being put into this part of the Srimad-Bhagavatam is an interesting study. It's an interesting addition, because he is the most dear devotee to the Lord outside of Vrindavan. There's a book called Bhagavatamrita by Sanatana Goswami, which describes the different devotees and the different places where the Lord performs pastimes. And they are intimate, more intimate, and most intimate, confidential, more confidential, and most confidential. And in those books, in the Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition, we understand that Vrindavan is the most intimate place where the associates love the Lord differently than they do anywhere else in the entire creation or spiritual world. And when Krishna expanded himself to his Vasudeva feature and left Vrindavan to go to Mathura, this thrust the gopis and the residents of Vrindavan into the greatest pain of separation. And when Krishna was in Mathura, he wanted to send a message back to them. And he chose his most dear associate. Who could bring his message to those people? And he chose Uddhava. So here again, Uddhava is remembering those residents of Vrindavan. And as we read these descriptions of Uddhava, knowing how dear he is to Krishna helps to excite and appreciate the whole experience.
Thank you. That's beautiful. Something for us to strive for. Ian, are you there? Would you like to read? I saw his name.
Can you hear me?
Yes, nice to
Okay,
hear
hello,
you, Ian. How are you feeling?
I'm okay now.
Good. How wonderful.
So should I, okay, 3.215?
Yeah.
Is that okay? The personality of Godhead, the all compassionate controller of both the spiritual and material creations, is unborn. When there is friction between his peaceful devotees and persons who are in the material modes of nature, takes birth just like fire, accompanied by the Mahat Tattva. Purport. Lord is everywhere in both the material and spiritual domains, and he appears for the sake of his devotees when there is friction between his devotee and the non-devotee, as electricity is generated by friction of matter anywhere and everywhere. The Lord, being all-pervading, appears because of the friction of devotees and non-devotees. Lord Krishna appeared just like electricity when there was friction between Kamsa and Vasudeva and Agresina. Vasudeva and Agresina were the Lord's devotees, and Kamsa, a representative of the Karmis and Gyanis, was a non-devotee. Krishna, as he is compared to the sun. He first appeared from the ocean of the womb of the Bhakti, and gradually he satisfied the inhabitants of the places surrounding Mathura, just as the sun enlivens the lotus flower in the morning. After gradually rising to the meridian of Dwarka, Lord set like the sun, placing everything in darkness, as described by Uddhava.
Wow. So that indicates that when we forget about Krishna, we're in darkness, right?
Yeah.
It just struck me.
Yeah.
Hare Krishna, thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Okay, let's go on with Manvantara. Can you read the slide and the next one too?
Srimad-Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 2, Text 16. When I think of Lord Krishna, how he was born in the prison house of Vasudeva, although he is unborn, how he went away from his father's protection to Raj and lived there incognito out of fear of the enemy, and how, although unlimitedly powerful, he fled from Mathura in fear. All these bewildering incidents give me distress.
Go on reading.
Purport. When a father plays with his little son, and the father lies down on the floor as if defeated by the son, it is just to give the little son pleasure and nothing more. Because the Lord is all powerful, it is possible for him to adjust opposites, such as birth and no birth, power and defeat, fear and fearlessness. A pure devotee knows very well how it is possible for the Lord to adjust opposite things, but he laments for the non-devotees who, not knowing the supreme glories of the Lord, think of him as imaginary simply because there are so many apparently contradictory statements in the scriptures. Factually, there is nothing contradictory. Everything is possible when we understand the Lord as the Lord and not as one of us with all of our imperfections.
Oh, God. That's beautiful. What do you think?
Well, it's really nice. But I was still thinking about Prabhu's question about the razzles of Raj, how they love Krishna, not even knowing that he's Krishna, versus the Yadus. I'm still like meditating on that because I think it's so profound. But I was thinking, because Krishna is absolute, right? Like, because the young Dasmos love him without inhibitions. I was thinking how Mother Kunti, when we were reading last year, how when she saw Krishna and was approaching him, and she was restricted or limited. She limited herself, and like she could see, because she identified with him as her nephew. She only saw him from his navel upwards. Remember, we were talking about meditating on Krishna's feet versus, looking at his face first, And so she restricted herself because of that relationship. But the Dasmos, Krishna is absolute. So they love him just because he's attracted to them. They're attracted to him. And so that love is profound, because um, because they didn't have any restrictions. Like they didn't include any restriction in their lives. You know, they dropped everything. They couldn't even finish their household chores. But like Mother Kunti, like she restricted herself. And because Krishna is complete, being absolute, it doesn't matter that they didn't know that he is God. Do you know what I mean? Does that? I just thought that was.
You're muted, Prabhu. You're
Oh,
muted,
yeah,
Prabhu.
okay. Everyone has their relationship, and Kunti didn't want to break that relationship, and it's more reverential because she's his aunt, right? So she was in that relationship. It was more reverential, whereas the damsels of Braja, that's more of a freedom, like friends and lovers. That's more of a freedom. So, but everyone is satisfied in each one of these relationships. We should really understand that. Is that all right? Shall we go on now with Faye? You want to read this one?
Mataji, Prabhu also was saying something when he was muted.
Pati, did you want to say something?
No, I was just saying you have to unmute.
Oh, thank you. Okay.
That was perfect. He had to tell you that you have to unmute while he was muted.
You're still muted, Sama. Or somebody is.
Okay. Faye, could you read, please?
Yes,
And
ma'am.
then, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mataji. Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.2.17. Lord Krishna begged pardon from his parents for their, meaning Krishna and Balaram's, inability to serve their feet due to being away from home because of great fear of Kamsa. He said, quote, "O mother, O father, please excuse us for this inability," end quote. All this behavior of the Lord gives me pain at heart. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. These are all glorified pastimes of the Lord, and there is no contradiction in such manifestations. Since Krishna is the Supreme Lord, he was never afraid of Kamsa, but to please his father, he agreed to be so. And the most brilliant part of his supreme character was that he begged pardon from his parents for being unable to serve their feet while absent from home because of fear of Kamsa. The Lord, whose lotus feet are worshipped by demigods like Brahma and Shiva, wanted to worship the feet of Vasudeva. Such instruction by the Lord to the world is quite appropriate. Even if one is the Supreme Lord, one must serve his parents. A son is indebted to his parents in so many ways, and it is the duty of the son to serve his parents, however great the son may be. Indirectly, Krishna wanted to teach the atheist who do not accept the supreme fatherhood of God, and they may learn from this action how much the Supreme Father has to be respected. Uddhava was simply struck with wonder by such glorious behavior of the Lord, and he was very sorry that he was unable to go with him.
Faye, why don't you say something about that?
Thank you. This all ties very nicely back to the verses that we've been reading today in terms of not only physical perspective, whether it's myopic or huge, what we see, and rasas, how we relate to the Lord. I'd like to also point out that we know Uddhava was a very dear devotee of the Lord, very close to Lord Krishna, yet he's in the material world and he's lamenting. And in those moods of lamentation, as his human emotions fluctuate up and down, we see something that appears to be contradictory, but actually he is experiencing moods of separation. It must have been devastating to have been with Krishna, seen him personally, interacted with him, and now, no, he's not there where you can physically see him in the way you did before. So there's a great deal of angst in here that comes out quite nicely. I like the way that Srila Prabhupada always points out the many, many layers of the cake underneath relating to our parents, and the way Lord Krishna perfectly played his role as being, quote, afraid of Kamsa. He wasn't. We know this, but he satisfied his dear devotee by pretending to be so. He publicly, a few years later, is satisfying his dear devotee by saying, "Oh, please forgive me, Father. Please forgive me, Mother, because I was not here. And I wasn't here with you all this time because I was afraid of Kamsa." So he is relating to every one of us in a particular way. And here we see some beautiful things coming through, not only from the purports in the preceding verses and the insights of Srila Prabhupada, but just by looking at Uddhava closely, we see so much.
Certainly. Thank you, Faye. When Krishna performs a pastime, when he does anything, it's always to instruct the conditioned soul, even to teach us how to relate with each other, with family and friends, and etiquette. Etiquette, we see, is a great part of the Vedic culture, and we can see the lack of etiquette in the world today, and how the Vedic culture is really losing hold on this world. Thank you. That was wonderful. Shall we go on now with Elizabeth? Do you want to read the next slide?
Yes, Mataji, Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:2-18. Who, after smelling the dust of his lotus feet, even once, could ever forget it? Simply by expanding the leaves of his eyebrows, Krishna has given the death blow to those who were burdening the earth. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Lord Krishna cannot be accepted as one of the human beings, even though he played the role of an obedient son. His actions were so extraordinary that by simply raising his eyebrows, he could deliver death blows to those who were burdening the earth.
Very good. Read the next one too. Thank you.
Srimad-Bhagavatam 3:2-19. You have personally seen how the king of Shedi, Shishupala, achieved success in yoga practice. Although he hated Lord Krishna, even the actual gopis aspire after yogis aspire after such success with great interest by performance of their various pastimes. Who can tolerate separation from him? Purport by Srila Prabhupada. In the open assembly of the Rajasuya sacrifice performed by Maharaj Yudhishthir, Shishupala insulted Lord Krishna and he was finally killed by the Lord. But it was seen by everyone in the assembly that a light flashed out of the body of the king of Shedi and merged into the body of Lord Krishna. This means that Shaidiraj achieved the salvation of attaining oneness with the Supreme, which is a perfection most desired by the Jnanis and Yogis, and for which they execute their different types of transcendental activities.
That's very far out, isn't it? Thank you.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty clear. But you have to unmute.
Sorry, what's clear? What's the main point being brought out in this particular circumstance?
What is it, Elizabeth? Do you know?
Elizabeth, what's the main point that Uddhava is making?
Yeah, I was thinking that it is also related to the things that we've talked about before. So we're talking about the rasas, this connection that we have with Krishna. So the same with the moment of death and, you know, the destination, you know, he was more in the impersonalist area. And so he...
Who was an impersonalist?
The Shaddai Raj. And so
how do you figure that?
Because he merges with the Brahmayoti.
No. You're missing the point there. What's happening here? He's not desirous to merge into the Brahmajyoti. The point being made here is that although he hated Krishna, still the Lord is so merciful to him that he allowed him, that he gave him that benediction. It's not that he was an impersonalist.
That is true.
He got the same reward that the impersonalists, like the yogis and Gyanis, strive for just by being killed by Krishna. That's Krishna's mercy on him. See?
Here we see. He achieved the success of yoga practice, although he hated Lord Krishna. So there's a point in Krishna's character that Uddhava is emphasizing. Okay?
His kindness. You see that? There. Shall we go on? Tisha, sure. Could you read the next slides? This and the next one?
Okay, Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.2.20. Certainly others who were fighters on the battle of Kurukshetra were purified by the onslaught of Arjuna's arrows, and while seeing the lotus-like face of Krishna, so pleasing to the eyes, they achieved the abode of the Lord. Purport. All the warriors who fought against Arjuna, but who were able to see the lotus-like face of the Lord on the battlefront, achieved the abode of the Lord, exactly as the devotees of the Lord do. The words, quote, pleasing to the eyes of the seer, unquote, are very significant. When the warriors from the other side of the battlefield saw Lord Krishna at the front, they appreciated his beauty, and their dormant instinct of love of Godhead was awakened. Shishupal saw the Lord also, but he saw him as his enemy, and his love was not awakened. Therefore, Shishupal achieved oneness with the Lord by merging in the impersonal glare of his body called the Brahmajyoti. Others who were in the marginal position, being neither friends nor enemies, but slightly in love of Godhead by appreciating the beauty of his face, were at once promoted to the spiritual planet, the Vaikunthas. Love of Godhead is dormant in every living entity, and the entire process of devotional service unto the Lord is meant for awakening the dormant, eternal love of Godhead. But there are degrees, there are degrees of such transcendental awakening. Those whose love of Godhead is awakened to the fullest extent go back to the Goloka Vrindavana planet in the spiritual sky. Whereas persons who have just awakened to love of Godhead by accident or association are transferred to the Vaikuntha planets. Essentially, there is no material difference between Goloka and Vaikuntha, but in the Vaikunthas, the Lord is served in unlimited opulence, whereas in Goloka, the Lord is served in natural affection.
So every relationship that we want to have with Krishna can be achieved. Everything that one is inclined in any way one would like to serve Krishna.
Tisha, can you explain that a little bit? We can take a minute to do that, son.
But
Well,
sorry.
I don't know how, like, for my feeling is that the even Shishapal, who was had so much hatred towards Krishna, I mean, it's just for me fascinating to imagine that he still got the benefit, and just of going back to Godhead, just the degrees for me of understanding Krishna. Like, if you can understand this much of Krishna, then you get to Vaikuntha, or this much of Krishna, even more of Krishna, to get to the ultimate Goloka. So I think for me that word mercy, or like, there's so much mercy there for us to keep growing and attaining.
Nice. Even the people who were at war against him, simply by seeing him on the battlefield, were benedicted. That's mercy. That's grace.
Yeah.
If I may say, the wonderful thing about the practice of Krishna consciousness and about Krishna is that we don't have to, in the beginning, or if we're confused about what is our eternal relationship with Krishna, of course, we all know we're his servants. But further than that, if we continue just serving, Krishna takes care of it. He will put it just where we're supposed to be, and awaken that divine love that is natural for us to experience in relation to him. That's why this practice that Lord Chaitanya gave us, chanting Hare Krishna, hearing the Bhagavatam, following the religious principles, regulated principles, this is the system that awakens the soul to his eternal relationship with Krishna. Even we're not knowing what that is, he knows, and he'll put us there. We should have that much faith.
Appreciating also that point, linking that with these points and details of his character gives us faith that will take place, knowing his nature.
Right.
He's appreciating what we're doing.
He is. That's one. Right. We're chanting. We're serving. We're doing something for Krishna, some kind of service. He actually appreciates that. Oh, thank you. And then the relationship begins. He's so kind. Right. So the word is mercy. You're right. That is the word. We are all mercy cases, especially now in Kali Yuga. Thank you, Tisha. Shall we go on now? I see that. How about Celia? Chetamai, are you there? I saw you there. Would you like to read? Maybe she's not hooked up yet.
Here we go. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can.
Thank you. Haribol. Okay.
Haribol.
Sorry I'm late. We have guests here, but I'm doing my best.
Okay.
Okay. Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.2.21. Lord Krishna is the Lord of all kinds of threes. Oh yeah, this verse is so interesting. And is independently supreme by achievement of all kinds of fortune. He is worshipped by the eternal maintainers of the creation, who offer him the paraphernalia of worship by touching the millions of helmets to his feet. Purport. Lord Sri Krishna is so mild and merciful, as described in the above verses, and yet he is the Lord of all kinds of threes. He is the supreme Lord of the three worlds, three qualities of material nature, and the three Purushas, Karnadakashayi, Garbhodakashayi, and Shirodakashayi Vishnu. There are innumerable universes, and in each and every universe, there are different manifestations of Brahma, Vishnu, and Rudra. Besides that, there is the Sheshamurti, who bears all the universes on his hoods. And Lord Krishna is the Lord of all of them. As the incarnation of Manu, he is the original source of all Manus in innumerable universes. Each universe has manifestations of 504,000 Manus.
Wow.
He is the Lord of the three principal potencies, namely Chit Shakti, Maya Shakti, and Tatashta Shakti. And he is the complete master of 6 kinds of fortune: wealth, strength, fame, beauty, knowledge, and renunciation. There is none who can excel him in any matter of enjoyment, and certainly there is no one greater than him. No one is equal to or greater than him. It is the duty of everyone, whoever and wherever one may be, to surrender completely unto him. It is not wonderful, therefore, that all the transcendental controllers surrender to him and make all offerings of worship.
Thank you. Do you want to say something real quick about that?
I'm just fascinated by this Lord of all kinds of threes. 3 modes of nature, the 3 Purushas. It's such an interesting number. We have this numerology in our Sampradaya. There's number 108, and I see number 24 happens, the 24 parts of material nature, and of threes, there are many, many different varieties. Just the word AUM is composed of 3 letters, and each one of those has a special significance. But it shows him as the vortex of all of these beautiful fractal emanations.
Right. Very good. Yeah, it's infinite. It's infinite. But it's 3 also. Hare Krishna.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, so next, Vaishnavi, would you like to read? Thank you, Chaita.
You're welcome, Mataji.
Okay, Srimad-Bhagavatam 3.2.22. Therefore, O Vidura, does it not pain us, his servitors, when we remember that he, Lord Krishna, used to stand before King Ugrasena, who was sitting on the royal throne, and used to submit explanations before him, saying, "O my Lord, please let me be known to you." Purport. Lord Krishna's gentle behavior before his so-called superiors, such as his father, grandfather, elder brother, his amiable behavior with his so-called wives, friends, and contemporaries, his behavior as a child before his mother Yashoda, and his naughty dealings with his young girlfriends cannot bewilder a pure devotee like Uddhava. Others who are not devotees are bewildered by such behavior of the Lord, who acted just as a human being. Persons with the poor fund of knowledge belittle the personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, not knowing his exalted position as the Lord of everything. In Bhagavad Gita, the Lord has explained his position clearly, but the demoniac, atheistic student squeezes out an interpretation to suit his own purpose and misleads unfortunate followers into the same mentality. Such unfortunate persons merely pick up some slogans from the great book of knowledge but are unable to estimate the Lord as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Pure devotees like Uddhava, however, are never misled by such atheistic opportunities.
Thank you, Vaishnavi. That last line, pure devotees are never misled by such atheistic opportunities. That reminds me of the verse we read previously, that a devotee's mind will not be swayed by atheists or less intelligent people. When a devotee is fixed in his devotion to Krishna, he won't budge. But didn't we read what verse was that previously? Just in the beginning of this session. Thank you. Shall we go on now? Ian, would you like to read this in the next slide?
Okay. 3.2.23. Alas, how shall I take shelter of one more merciful than he who granted the portion of of mother to a she demon Putana, although she was unfaithful and she prepared deadly poison to be sucked from her breast. Purport. Here's an example of the extreme mercy of the Lord even to his enemy. It is said that a noble man accepts the good qualities of a person of doubtful character, just as one accepts nectar from a stalk of poison. In his babyhood, he was administered deadly poison by Putana, a she demon who tried to kill the wonderful baby. And because she was a demon, it was impossible for her to know that the Supreme Lord, even though playing the part of a baby, was no one less than the same Supreme Personality of Godhead. His value as the Supreme Lord did not diminish upon his becoming a baby to please his devotee Yashoda. The Lord may assume the form of a baby or a shape other than that of a human being, but it doesn't make the slightest difference. He is always the same Supreme. A living creature, however powerful he may become by dint of severe penance, can never become equal to the Supreme Lord. Lord Krishna accepted the motherhood of Putana because she pretended to be an affectionate mother, allowing Krishna to suck her breast. Lord accepts the least qualification of living entity and all awards him the highest reward. That is the standard of his character. Therefore, who but the Lord can be the ultimate shelter?
Thank you. And what does that mean to you?
Krishna, whatever forms, whatever pastimes he is involved in, is the same Supreme, whether it's playing the role of a baby or other forms, when different incarnations, when he assumes other forms, is the same Supreme Personality of God. There's no diminishing his supremeness, so to speak.
Good. That's perfect. Thank you, Ian.
Another point that I'm appreciating as we're reading this is the nature of that person. No matter what form he takes, no matter where he is, no matter what devotee is, the mercy and the appreciation. It says here that the Lord accepts the least qualification of a living entity and awards him the highest reward. Here we see someone approached him to kill him. That was her intent. But she did approach him and she did offer her breast milk to him. And his nature is that he saw that and awarded her. Actually, it's described by the acharyas that Putana went back to Goloka Vrindavan and she took the form, her eternal nature, her eternal form is one of a nurse of Lord Krishna. Now, in her previous life, she was also attracted. She was the sister of Bali Maharaj in her previous life. And what happened was that when she saw Vamana Dev, who came to the sacrifice where Bali was performing his sacrifice, she was so attracted to him. She thought, oh, how beautiful he is. I would love to love him. But then when Vamana Dev took away everything from Bali Maharaj, she became furious and angry and wanted to punish him. So she had these mixed feelings, but ultimately her love is what Sri Krishna actually saw and benedicted her for.
So I think it also, she was desirous to have him as her son.
Uh-huh.
That maternal instinct was there. Chaitamayi, do you have a question or you want to add something? You have your hand raised there. I can't hear you. Unmute.
There we go. Isn't this the verse that was spoken in the presence of Pundarik Vidyanidhi and sent him into an ecstatic tumult when Gadadhar Pandit went to visit him?
Yes.
Thank you. Hari Bol.
Very good connection. Wonderful. All right, let's read the last one. Tisha, could you read for us the last verse? Is
Yes.
this the last? Yeah, this is the last.
Okay. 3.2.24. I consider the demons who are inimical toward the Lord to be more than the devotees, because while fighting with the Lord, absorbed in thoughts of enmity, they are able to see the Lord carried on the shoulder of Garuda, the son of Tarkshya Kasyapa, and carrying the wheel weapon in his hand. Purport. Anyone who is slightly in touch with the Lord somehow or other is greatly benefited, even to the point of salvation, due to the excellence of the Lord. He is so kind that he awards salvation even to his enemies because they come into contact with him and are indirectly absorbed in him by their inimical thoughts. Actually, the demons can never be equal to the pure devotees, but Uddhava was thinking in that way because of his feelings of separation. He was thinking that at the last stage of his life, he might not be able to see the Lord face to face as he did the demons. The fact is that the devotees who are always engaged in the devotional service of the Lord in transcendental love are awarded many hundreds and thousands of times more than the demons by being elevated to the spiritual planets, where they remain with the Lord in eternal, blissful existence. The demons and impersonalists are awarded the facility of merging into the Brahmajyoti effulgence of the Lord, whereas the devotees are admitted into the spiritual planets. For comparison, one can just imagine the difference between floating in space and residing in one of the planets in the sky. The pleasure of the living entities on the planets is greater than that of those who have no body and who merge with the molecules of the sun's rays. The impersonalists, therefore, are no more favored than the enemies of the Lord. Rather, they are both on the same level of spiritual salvation.
Elizabeth, did you catch that one about the impersonalists and the enemies of the Lord? The enemies of the Lord are granted that form that is most desired by the impersonalists and the yogis, but it's not actually very exalted. That's the last verse. Would anyone like to ask a question? And I'd like to ask Guru Prasadam if he has any questions, or would you like to say something? This is the first time.
I'm okay. I like this group.
Oh, okay. You're okay. Okay.
I had a question, Mataji, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Nitya
Raise your hand if you have a question so I can see it on the screen. There's a thing down there. Go on, sweetie. Go on, Elizabeth.
Okay, so Nitya Vada, that caught my attention. It kind of worried me. Nitya Vada, or a condition forever. That was in 3.2.12 in the purport. If you could explain a little bit about that.
Pachi, you want to take that? Unmute.
Yeah, there are basically two types of living entities. Nitya Baddha means the eternally conditioned, and Nitya Mukta means eternally freed. Now, the unique thing about language and the concepts here, and this is what worried you, but this is what will alleviate that worry, is that a person who is a Nitya Baddha, an eternally conditioned soul, means that there's no way to trace out the initiative, the initial event. When they became conditioned by material nature, that there's no way to trace that out. But when that person who is a Nitya Baddha returns to the spiritual world, immediately they become a Nitya Siddha, an eternally liberated soul. And Krishna confirms this in the Bhagavad Gita, saying that never will that person take birth again. So once a soul is mature, and that relationship with the Lord has matured to its fullest, and there's a loving bond with him, then that's Nitya Siddha, that will never again become Nitya Baddha. But it's sort of like a language quirk. It's not that they're eternally conditioned, but because it can't be traced out and it comes from time immemorial, then it's considered Nitya Baddha. Is that clear?
Thank you. Okay, Madhurya has something also.
I was wondering about the Krishna when he left his body. I think I remember reading in 11th canto when they describe the leaving in more detail. isn't it that he did leave a material form to bewilder the materialists?
Yes,
He left a form.
but
It's kind of,
yeah, right. He
you
didn't
don't want to
leave like
call
a
it,
conditioned soul.
yeah, there was nothing, but he left something so that everyone would be satisfied. Those,
okay,
and it
thank
said
you.
in another verse that we just read, those who are not qualified to engage in devotional service because of lack of piety. You see, this is not, although it's the most natural thing for the living entity to engage in devotional service, due to lack of piety, one doesn't engage. So the things that might seem very natural to someone who is more pious or purified, that people can't understand it. They can't. So he, in order to satisfy that from the atheists, from the non-believers, those mentalities, he left something.
A graphic example of that is an analogy, is the example of a pig. A pig thinks it's enjoying, but a person of higher intelligence and higher birth and higher life, a human life, looks at that enjoyment and thinks it's putrid. It's a horrible way of life. So similarly, people with piety, with sukriti, they see things differently than people who don't have it.
The graphic example of the pig, if you've been to India, there, pigs love to sit in stool. That's the filthiest, disgustingest place. That's where the pig seeks it out, and he's in ecstasy. So just in case, it's a very unusual thing, but it's very, very, it's around. Everyone sees it. So is there anyone else have a question or comment about what we've read or anything about this section of the Bhagavatam? It's certainly a very profound section. It's my husband and I are discussing it constantly because Uddhava is such a wonderful personality, and so is Vidura. So these talks that actually are going to end soon because Maitreya will enter, and then Vidura will have his discussion with Maitreya. So anyone have a question or something to say? Pati, you want to say something?
No, that's it. Okay. Thank you very much for your association.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. We hope to see you next week.
Vanchakalpatarubhishcha,
Thank you, Guru Prasad, and thank you, Ian. I'm so glad that you returned.
Thank you, Mother.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.